I have to go and grab some things from the shops, and I wasn't going to go, but Juliet won't go down for her nap, so I'm like, fuck it, I may as well just go. But the reason I wasn't going to go is because I honestly don't feel good this morning. It's funny, I only ever upload videos when I don't feel right, and I upload videos of me talking about how I don't feel right, but from the outside, I guess that would make it seem like I don't feel right all of the time, but the days when I don't feel right are the odd exception. Like, usually I just go about my day, and that's why I'm not filming, because I'm doing, you know, all the things. But yeah, I wanted to film this one specifically because a while ago I got asked about how to do an exposure session without dying, like how to do it without feeling like you're gonna die. And it's a totally valid question, because I can understand when I wake up on days like this and I don't feel quite like myself, it's easy for me to slip back into that place where I don't feel capable of doing anything. I viscerally remember what it was like to be so overcome by those sensations and those feelings that I just could not get in the car and drive. I could not get out and do the exposure because my body was just like humming with this sick electricity of what is going to happen to me if I go out and do this. Like, I just couldn't cope with all the what ifs and the catastrophizing, and so my body was just like, yeah, just alive with fear. And I know that it can be really hard to think about doing an exposure session, because on the one hand it's easy to say, you know, well, you've got to go and put yourself out there, but it's like, how do you actually do that? Like, how do you do it? And so I wanted to talk about how I get myself through those mornings where I just feel incapable. And the first thing is that I recognize it. Like, I have those thoughts of like, I'm not feeling well, you know, like my brain will be like, oh, I have a stomach ache. What if today's the day that I actually, you know, something's actually wrong? Like, maybe it's not just an anxiety stomach ache, maybe it's like a legit something bad is gonna happen, stomach ache. So I recognize that my brain is scrambling to try and find the threat in this situation, and I recognize as well that what I'm doing in that moment is trying to keep myself safe. And so I used to jump on myself doing that as like a sign of my failure of being a human being. But now I sort of step back and I look at that as a whole, as me being like, I'm trying everything I can to keep myself safe, and I'm trying to grab all the pieces of me that feel like they might, you know, feel like they might be removed or feel like they can't cope, and I'm trying to sort of bring them all together by stopping myself from doing anything at all. That's what we're really doing in that moment. We're like contracting like a Slater bug, you know, like trying to stop ourselves from getting any kind of hurt, any part of ourselves hurt. So yeah, I recognize that. It sounds pretty simple, but it's hard to do. It's hard to step back and go, okay, this is what I'm doing in this moment, rather than getting caught up in the actual thoughts. The next thing that I do is that I remind myself that I'm always safe. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot, because it's always relevant for me. I always remind myself, you know, for example, like with the stomach ache, what if today's the day that I actually have something wrong with my stomach and I end up needing to go to hospital, or, you know, whatever. Not that I'm scared of hospitals, but it's still, you know, that fear of like not being able to control the situation pops up. I follow that thought through, and I'm like, if that happened, if I was in hospital or I was in pain and you know, all the rest of it, it still wouldn't mean anything bad. Like, I could still be me in that moment. It wouldn't mean that I've lost it and that I'm crazy. It wouldn't mean that things are so intense that I can't cope. It would just simply mean that I'm not well. Like, I'm physically unwell, and I could still be myself. I could still laugh and make jokes, and I would still be myself. I am always safe. There are always people out there who are going to look out for me, whether that's my family, friends, or, you know, people in hospital like doctors, nurses, etc. there's never going to be a situation where I'm that unsafe that I can't cope. So that's the other thing. And that one I have to lean into for a while. Like that one I really have to, you know, I picture it like cuddling my daughter when she's upset, my eldest daughter. You know, sometimes I really have to give her a good cuddle. Like it can't just be like a quick, you're okay. It has to be like, you know, this long, like I've got you sort of cuddle. So yeah, I really like try and sit with that feeling of like, you will be safe. And I just kind of like let myself feel those safe feelings. But even then, even with that stuff, although that sort of works to calm the terror in my brain, the only thing that helps to calm my body is by actually getting out and doing the thing that I need to do. So the way to do that without feeling like you're gonna die basically is to genuinely just do it. And I know that just doesn't make any sense. If you could do it, you would. But literally just get your keys or get whatever you need and walk out the door and go. Everyone knows that the first part of, like the hardest part of starting something is the first part is actually starting it. And that goes for everything in life, not just exposure, it goes for literally everything. The hardest part is starting. And once you do, things are easier. So know that that's the hardest thing that you need to do in that moment. Even if it seems like the actual exposure is the hardest thing that you need to do, the actual hardest thing is just getting out there in the first place. Once you're out there, things will be different and you'll feel less terrified. And then I suppose the most important thing also is remembering that, sort of on that note, that feeling of I can't do this, I can't cope, it's not going to just remain as like a you know, a solid feeling. It's going to dip, it's going to rise, it's going to fall, it's going to, you know, it's going to do a lot of that. It's not just going to be like, I can't cope, I can't cope, I can't cope the whole time. There are going to be different elements of it. And so recognizing that the terror you feel at the thought of doing the exposure, it's not representative of the terror that you're going to feel while you're doing the exposure, if that makes sense. Like we often feel like if I feel this bad now, then when I'm out there doing the scary thing, I'm gonna feel even worse. Like if this is how, if I can't even cope with the idea of going out and doing this, then how am I gonna cope with actually going out and doing it? That used to be something that I thought a lot. But yeah, point out to yourself that the way I feel now is not indicative of the way I'm gonna feel when I'm doing the thing. The way we feel in our imagination about things is so heavily influenced by not only past experiences and memories, but even just like our emotional state in that moment. You know, there are so many factors that contribute to how we feel in that moment, and things like even have I had enough sleep, have I had enough water, have I had enough protein, like you know, enough carbs, like those sort of things can influence how you feel about doing a situation later on. So I might be sitting at home, in fact I was sitting at home thinking about going to the shops and, you know, feeling my stomach ache and feeling tired and feeling sick and feeling a bit hot and flushed and feeling like I wasn't capable. And yet that like perceived way of how I felt and how I was going to feel when I go outside, the reason I was feeling that way in that moment was not just because my imagination was thinking about all the terrible things that might happen and therefore my body was feeling that, but I am tired. I'm a bit sleep deprived. I have a 4-month-old. I haven't been drinking enough water. I don't really have enough nutrients in my body because I'm breastfeeding and they're all getting leached. But yeah, so there are so many factors that contribute to the way that I felt when I was sitting at home thinking about having to go out to the shops. But we don't understand that. What we think is that the reason I'm feeling this way is because going out and doing that thing is so insurmountable and so hard that my body's trying to warn me against it. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I can tell you, I already feel way better than I did before I left the house. When I was sitting at home on my bed trying to put Juliet to sleep, you know, thinking I can't go out to the shops today, my body feels fucked. Like my stomach hurts, you know, I feel sick, I feel hot, you know, there's something obviously not right. I don't feel sick anymore. I don't feel abnormal because I'm actually out in the world doing the thing that I was afraid of. Whereas back when I was, you know, at home, it was all imagination. It was all like, you know, like I said, other factors influencing how I was feeling in that moment. It wasn't actually an accurate representation of how I would feel once I'm out here, because you don't know how you're going to feel until you get out there. That's the truth. Anyway, I hope a little bit of that helped. If you want some more info on how to do the exposures, I am happy to talk about or ramble some more at you. But yeah, I hope that helped a little bit, at least getting in the sort of right mindset to get out there.